In the UK, the wildlife trusts are running a 30 Days Wild challenge. And when I heard about it, I decided it sounded like a lot of fun, so I signed up. The idea is to inspire people to connect with nature, either through doing one nature-focused activity a day or several over a week, throughout the month of June. It's designed so that anyone can take part, regardless of whether you live in a city centre or out in the countryside, and whether the nature you have access to is your garden, a local park, or a nature reserve. There are options to sign up to receive your pack digitally or by post. I chose the posted one, as it includes a tiny packet of seeds, which I'm really looking forward to planting. I don't think the postal packs are available outside the UK, but you may be able to get a digital one. If not, please do live vicariously through me, as I post with wild abandon about my own experiences with this challenge. There are two types of pack, for adults or for kids, and they're available in both English and Welsh. They seem pretty similar, with the kids pack including wildflower seeds, while the adults pack contains herb seeds. Unique to the kids pack is a 30 Days Wild passport and collectible trading cards. Unique to the adults pack is a greeting card with tearaway postcards, so you can send it to a friend to encourage them to sign up for the challenge. Both packs contain a planner and a poster, though the poster appears to be different. Regardless of whether you signed up for a digital or postal pack, you still get daily emails which include ideas for challenge activities, along with interesting wildlife and nature facts. The packs and challenge are free, though the Wildlife Trust will happily accept donations to cover their costs. Why am I telling you all this, though? Hi, I'm Dr. Eleanor Tufnell, an environmental scientist, and for the month of June, I'm going to be making videos on my experiences with this challenge. The long-form videos will each be focused around a different place, where I will spend time and conduct a leisurely survey of the different species I encounter there. As the challenge itself is quite broad, not all of their tips will apply to all locations, so I wanted to showcase the wildlife you can find in different areas. I intend to make a few species ID shorts of some of the species I encountered during these videos. This week, I'll be taking you through the nature I encountered right outside my own door in the garden. A safari in my own back garden. I'm incredibly fortunate to not only have a garden, but a pretty large one. I also live out in the countryside, so we get more species in the garden than might be seen in the middle of the city. I got lucky again because the day I decided to do this was the last fine day for a while. I didn't have any strict criteria for how I was going to conduct my survey. The idea was just to spend some peaceful, quiet time in my garden and note down whatever species showed up that day. My ID skills are sadly still very imperfect, particularly when it comes to birdsong, so I cannot be 100% certain of every species. But part of the process of learning to ID species is just doing it. No point waiting till you're perfect at it, as you just need to dive in. I would recommend against most species ID apps, particularly if they're using AI. Aside from the environmental impact their AI has, see my video on that for details, they can also be dangerously unreliable. However, there are a few pretty reliable apps out there. The only one I know well enough to personally recommend is the Merlin App, developed by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology at Cornell University. This app helps you identify birds by their song, photo, or by careful process of elimination. As with anything, it can make mistakes. For example, during my time in the garden, it tentatively ID'd a kingfisher's call, though noted this was unlikely due to my location. I agree, as we're nowhere near suitable habitat for kingfishers. The upshot is, always take what an app tells you with a grain of salt. My preferred method of IDing species is a book or field study guide. It is not usually practical to bring many of these at once, so my strategy is to decide what group of animals, plants, or fungi I wish to look for, and bring the appropriate guides. This also means you don't become overwhelmed trying to ID literally everything. I also find I remember better if I've gone through the process of IDing a species with a book, asking questions like what habitat is it found in, what size is it, what colour, if it's an animal, how does it move, what sound does it make, what kind of distinctive markings does it have. You learn more about the species and its habitat this way, and it gets easier to identify it in the future. If one simply waves a phone at it, takes a picture and gets a quick answer, the information is rarely retained, which is fine if it was just momentary curiosity. But if you want to be able to identify species going forward, it's less helpful. The mammals. During my garden time, I encountered several animal groups. Sadly, no reptiles or amphibians, though I can't discount their possible presence. I did not see any that day. But I did see mammals, birds, and a wide variety of invertebrates. So I'll start with the category where the creatures are largest, albeit less numerous, and work our way down to the ground level. The largest species I saw was the Muntjac deer. This is a non-native species that originated in China, but was introduced to the UK in the early 20th century. It rapidly spread and can now be found throughout much of the southeast England. There are 7 species of Muntjac, and 2 of these were introduced to the UK, but only one has been very successful, and that is the Reeves Muntjac. These are rather small deer, have a stocky build, russet ginger brown fur most of the year, though this turns a dull grey in the winter. I'm assuming this is for camouflage, but haven't been able to confirm this. They have a pale underside, dark stripes on their faces, and the antlers, during the time of year where males have them, are small and single-pointed. Males are about 10 to 18 kilos, while females are a little lighter. That's 22 to 40 pounds in old money. They appear hunched as their rumps are naturally higher than their shoulders. Their tails are wide and flat. When disturbed, their tail is raised, which shows off the white underside as the deer flees. These are a non-native species, and adults have no predators, not counting the automobile, which is a problem as they can be destructive to habitat and overgrazing can damage areas. People generally do not want deer in their gardens as they will graze on much wanted plants. However, fortunately, the only part of my garden that they can access is essentially wildflower meadow anyway, so they don't cause any harm and can actually help us keep the grass at a manageable level. The second and last mammal species I saw that day was the grey squirrel, which oddly enough is also an invasive species. This time they came from North America, introduced around the 19th century. Their introduction had devastating effects on native red squirrel populations. Grey squirrels are larger and outcompete reds for food. They also introduced a virus called squirrel pox, which the greys are immune to, but it is unfortunately fatal for red squirrels. The only remaining populations of red squirrels in the UK are in places where the greys are absent or rare, such as in parts of Scotland and on various islands. Though this seems to be slowly changing as the re-emergence of the pine marten has shifted the balance back in favour of the reds. That's a fascinating story in its own right, and I shall be making a video about it. On top of their impact on native red squirrels, grey squirrels can also change the natural composition of native woodlands as they strip bark and eat certain seeds. So while they are entertaining and adorable to watch, their presence is not necessarily positive for the ecosystem. Birds. Probably the most numerous of the creatures I encountered during my time in the garden. I can divide these creatures into those that I saw and those that I heard, with some overlap. In total, I believe I ID'd around 17 different species. Bearing in mind my earlier disclaimer about birdsong identification being imperfect, the birds I heard but did not see that day were the common chiffchaff, the European jackdaw, the great tit, blue tit, carrion crow, Eurasian collared dove, Eurasian blackcap, the dunnock, coal tit, Eurasian wren, garden warbler, and Eurasian magpie. Those I was privileged enough to see, and often also hear, were the common wood pigeon, the Eurasian blackbird, the European robin, a rook, and the goldcrest. Now, we'd be here all day if I went into depth about all 17 of these birds, so here are a couple of the highlights. The goldcrests had a nest in my roses, and I saw them entering and leaving often. I even saw their little faces peering out of the nest a few times. Sadly, the day after my garden day, we discovered that the nest had been destroyed, probably by a predation attempt from another bird. We've seen at least one of the goldcrests taking moss and leaves from the old nest site and believe that both adults are got out alive. We do not know whether they had laid eggs yet or if there had been chicks in the nest when it was attacked. As sad as this is, it's also a part of nature. The jays, which we believe to be the most likely culprits, also need to eat and almost certainly have chicks of their own to feed right now. The European robin is a cheeky little bird and one we frequently see in the garden. I actually managed to get some admittedly less than perfect photos of this bird when it visited me. These little birds are unrelated to the American robin, which belongs to a different taxonomical family, the thrush, while the European robin is part of the Old World flycatcher family. The European robin has a brown back, a white belly, and the signature orange-red breast from the middle of their chest all the way up their face. They eat fruits, seeds, and insects, so have a wide buffet available in my garden. They're also loud, singing fiercely to defend their territory. Insects. Now for the smallest creatures I encountered in the garden. One of the tips sent to me for the 30 Days Wild Challenge was to do a mini beast safari, searching for invertebrates such as beetles, spiders, and snails. I didn't do a full catalogue of all inverts I could find in the garden, but I did try to find some interesting ones. The first to arrive were some bumblebees. I wasn't initially sure which variety they were, so spent some considerable time stalking them through my herb garden, trying to get a closer look at their bums. Because I could see that they were from the white-tailed bumblebee group, but couldn't tell whether they were buff-tailed bumblebees or white-tailed bumblebees. When identifying bumblebees, the key features are usually the colour of the tail and the pattern and location of the banding. Both varieties of these bumblebees are large, with black bodies and golden yellow bands. The first of which is at the front of the thorax, and the second is around the middle of the abdomen. Queens are easiest to tell apart, as the white-tailed queens have pure white tails, while buff-tailed queens have golden yellow buff coloured tails. The workers are harder to distinguish. The workers and males of the buff-tail look very similar, and their tails are white, though often have a fringe or buff coloration at the top. White-tailed bumblebee males have impressive yellow facial hair, and varying amounts of extra yellow on their body. White-tailed bumblebee workers are smaller than the queen, but have similar coloration and bands. So which bumblebee did I see? Well, having spent a lot of time carefully watching them, I'm reasonably sure I can see the tea-stained buff at the top of their tails. So I think these are buff-tail workers. Either way, they seem to really love my chive flowers. Both white-tails and buff-tails have short tongues, so while they feed on a variety of flowers, they struggle with long tubular flowers. If you want to attract them, easy-access flowers are a good choice. I also saw a large unidentified bumblebee, but given her size and coloration, I believe she was a red-tailed queen of some sort. The next bees I saw were honeybees, which were enjoying some cool water from the trough we leave out for them. The trough was originally for plant pots and is now full of small stones and glass pebbles, so that the bees and other insects have somewhere to safely drink. It's not really a surprise to see honeybees here, as we have a beehive at the end of the garden, but it was lovely to watch them get a cool drink on the warm day. Amongst them were other insects, including a little imposter. See this little fly's coloration? Looks rather like a bee or a wasp, doesn't it? But it's not. This is a species of hoverfly. The coloration is an example of Batesian mimicry, where a harmless species has the appearance of a more dangerous one, usually to ward off predators. Now, there are easily over 280 species of hoverfly in the UK alone, and even in the suburbs, the average garden could contain over 40. So, my odds of correctly IDing this one are low. The species that most closely resembles what I've seen are the Hoverflies family, possibly H. pendulus, H. hybridus, or H. trivittatus. I'm basing this on the yellow-white stripes on the thorax behind the head, which give the Hoverflies pendulus the nickname of the footballer, as it resembles a football shirt, and the tiger. As the Hoverflies hybridus has a more yellow abdomen, I feel this is a less likely possibility. The Hoverflies trivittatus is larger, has a more lemon-yellow coloration and a yellow face. I think that my hoverfly is either a pendulus or a trivittatus, but cannot be certain. Both are pretty common and enjoy wetland areas. Given that there are multiple water sources in my garden, including a mini pond in a trug, it makes sense that either species would be present. If there are any hoverfly experts in my audience, or you just fancy having a go at IDing it, please do let me know what you think. Pendulus or trivittatus, or am I entirely off the mark? I expected to see multiple butterflies, but did not expect to be able to photograph them. While the holly blue that fluttered past proved me right, the speckled wood decided to stop a few times on my roses and allowed me to take some not dreadful photographs. These butterflies are, as the name suggests, generally forest dwellers, but as there are many mature trees in and around my garden, they apparently felt quite at home here. The last insect in this video I found completely by accident, while looking for an entirely unrelated insect. You see, my family have seen cinnabar moths in the garden lately, and if you've watched my short on them, you'll know how much I love them. I went looking for cinnabar moths, caterpillars, and their food plant, ragwort. On that day I found ragwort, but no cinnabars. However, while inspecting a ragwort, I noticed something beautiful sitting on a nearby buttercup. I naturally snapped a photo and got to work identifying it. My mother instantly recognised it as a longhorn beetle of some sort, which narrowed my search considerably. After a quick flick through my field study guide on longhorn beetles, the fact that I have this tells you quite a bit about me and my family, and my beautiful beetle friend stood out at once. I believe this beetle to be the musk beetle. As you can see, this beetle has long antennae, which is why it was so obviously a part of the longhorn beetles. It is also stunning metallic, coppery blue-green colour, which has a beautiful contrast to the vibrant yellow of the buttercup on which it is standing. The musk beetle gets its name due to the musk scent that it gives off when threatened. They typically inhabit woodland and wetland areas. Apparently my garden is providing multiple habitats in one. Plants. Now, if I stopped to tell you every plant I found in my garden, we'd be here forever. Particularly if I tried to distinguish the multiple different species of grasses that make up my lawn/meadow. But there are a couple that stood out and I felt deserved a little spotlight. While I was exploring my garden and checking the progress of the compost bins, I noticed a flash of colour. Some beautiful foxgloves had sprung up right in the middle of a thicket of nettles. These are a native species with long tubular flowers, in this case pink. As their long tubes make it difficult for short-tongued bees, such as the aforementioned white and buff-tailed bumblebees, these flowers are instead serviced by their long-tongued relatives, such as the common carder bee. Foxgloves are an important source of pollen for many bee species, and has a number of interesting folklore stories associated with it. Maybe I'll do a video on them. They're also rather poisonous, so do not eat them. Wash your hands thoroughly if you need to touch them, That said, a chemical they contain, called digitalis, has been used to treat heart failure and high blood pressure. Do not attempt to self-administer, as if consumed directly, this plant is highly toxic. Seriously guys, herbs are freaking awesome, but if you don't know what you're doing, many of them can and will kill you. Around the foxglove flowers are a mass of tall, healthy nettles, one of which had fallen over, and as I was wearing sandals at the time, I got mildly stung on my way past. To be clear, these are the common nettle, or stinging nettle, and its stings are uncomfortable and mildly unpainful. For me, the pain wore off after about an hour, and it was not especially troubling. I actually know a few people who regularly nettle themselves deliberately, as it is thought to ease or override skeletal muscular pains such as osteoarthritis. There has been some research into the effectiveness of using nettles as pain relief, and these studies have shown some mixed results. Some indicate it may be effective for certain types of pain, but more research will need to be done to identify what it, if anything, is most effective for, which species of nettle are most effective, and how best to administer it. Aside from their possible medical benefits, stinging nettles are a food plant for the caterpillars of a number of butterflies, including the comma, small tortoiseshell, peacock, and red admiral. Adult butterflies may use nettles as feed plants and lay their eggs on the leaves. Nettles are fed upon by aphids, which in turn attract ladybirds. Their seeds are enjoyed by seed-eating birds such as chaffinches, bullfinches, and sparrows. Their dense foliage can also provide habitat and hiding spaces for amphibians such as frogs and toads, and other small creatures such as shrews and hedgehogs. Historically, and to this day, the plant has been used by humans for medicinal, culinary, textiles, and agriculture. It is often repeated that the stinging nettle is not native to the UK, but was instead brought over by the Romans, who used the plant's sting to ward them against the cold climate. Ouch. However, while Pliny the Elder mentions nettles as food and suggests olive oil as a remedy for their stings, the skin-warming effect and the nettle's arrival in Britain are not mentioned in classical texts. The idea that the Romans introduced the stinging nettle to Britain appears to originate in the writings of an Elizabethan author, William Camden, rather than any ancient source. Additionally, in 2011, an excavation of an early Bronze Age burial at White Horse Hill in Dartmoor, Devon, found fragments of fabric made from nettle fibres. The site dates to around 1730 to 1600 BCE, so long before the arrival of the Romans. It is unknown whether the nettle fabric was made locally or traded for from mainland Europe. The fabric bore some similarities to samples found in Denmark, but was much thicker. In short, it's not certain that the nettles are truly native to Britain, but I would argue the evidence points towards them being so. And before leaving this section, I want to give a shout out to the many species of grasses that are thriving in my lawn. No Mow May may be over, but Let It Bloom June has just begun. So if you can leave your lawn unmowed a little bit longer, the wildlife will thank you for it. I'm not even going to attempt to ID the different grass varieties here, but please do note that there are several, and many of them have seed heads, which should provide delicious meals for a variety of birds and small mammals. Conclusion. So I hope you've enjoyed this video exploring the species in my garden. Perhaps you found it odd I spent so much time talking about a weed like the nettle, but even weeds often fulfill some important functions for the ecosystem. Some have long histories of use in herbal medicine, folklore, textiles, dyes, or food. It's all a part of the natural world. For me, part of my 30 Days Wild challenge is taking the time to notice smaller, more overlooked pieces of nature. I was delighted at the number of species I identified over such a short time. Approximately 25 of them, in fact. And that's not counting the many species of plants around the garden. I hope this has inspired you to have a quiet, close look at the nature around you. I wonder what you'll find that might surprise you. As always, I've left a library of links in the description if you'd like to learn more. So until next time, thank you for watching.